Go take a look out that window for a moment. See that huge spire in the distance? That's where we're headed. Little confession. I don't know for sure whether it still works. It is possible that there is just a pile of rubble waiting for us.
Judging by how torn apart this place is, I'd give that chance a possibility of... Ooh, you know what? Never mind.
Pacing is really difficult in games, because you're pacing multiple elements at once, story and gameplay. Gameplay pacing is based on fatigue and playtime. You can make a 1 hour, 10 hour or 50 hour game and still pace the gameplay well. It's usually not a problem for short games, but the larger your game is, the harder it becomes to keep the story paced. For example, you might find a lot of open world games have a very drawn out midpoint with a short beginning and end. Portal Revolution is short enough that story pacing is very much doable, but we still had to be very conscious about moving the story forward on a pace that feels sensible.
I hate to say it, but we need to find a testing track. Look, I'm sorry. I don't want to torture you with endless testing. You already proved that you're capable. Problem is that these backstage areas aren't built to be as durable as the test chambers. To cover any ground here, we need to move between testing tracks.
Plants are shiny. Nobody believes me when I say this, but they are. Go outside and look at a leaf. The sun will cast some specular highlights. Portal 2's leaves never did this, so we added some foam to try and approximate this look. It's very subtle, but compared to before looks better for negligible performance cost. This area has changed a lot. It used to feature a lot more naturalistic elements, like rock and grass. It looked cool, but when we switched to cascaded shadow maps, we had to recreate large chunks of that map and ended up basically rebuilding this entire section. The first room also had a waterfall in it, but we never finished the particle effect and cut it out. Since it didn't feature any gameplay, we then took elements from the room after it, which included this little navigational puzzle. We still liked how the old area felt, but are happy with the condensed version. Our early level designs often lack density, which makes the game feel longer since there are more areas, but if each area is passed in under 20 seconds, the time invested into decorating those spaces doesn't make sense. So over time we condensed areas more and more, and tried to find ways to get the most out of a single space.
For the outside sections, I used a lot of softer sounding synths and stringed instruments. I wanted to convey the serenity of seeing the sky again, and also the feeling that freedom is still just out of reach, that you haven't quite escaped yet.
Portal 2 uses projected textures to create sunlight with real-time shadows in its overgrown areas. Community mappers do the same, but their technique isn't ideal. Projected textures are spotlights and create converging shadows, which is not how sun shadows look. Their resolution is also limited, so the further you stretch the area of influence, the worse the shadows look. They don't follow the player, and if you try to parent it to the player, their shadows will look wrong when you look through a portal. Long story short, projected textures aren't ideal for sunlight. CSGO implemented a similar shadow mapping technique built specifically for sunlight called Cascaded Shadow Maps, or CSM. Since our custom engine branch is based on CSGO, we were able to use it in Portal Revolution.
Good find. But this testing track isn't in good shape. There should be another one not far from here. See if you can find it.
CSM works by casting 3 shadow maps, called cascades, around the player from the same angle, but on different scales. The first cascade is just a few meters around the player, the next a few more, and the last reaches as far as the player would be expected to see in a typical map. This means that shadows will always be at high resolution around the player, with low resolution further away where it doesn't matter. Now, as always, portals complicate everything. Since the shadows follow the player, if you look through a portal, the shadow resolution will be centered around the player's position. This caused awful shadows while looking through a portal, and popping when you step through and have the positions updated. This took a long time to fix. We were first aware of this bug around 2020 and have only been able to fix it in late 2023. We needed to add an additional 3 cascades, centered around the position of the camera behind the portal from where the portal view is being rendered. I'm sure there are many ways to further optimize this, since this technique now needs to render twice as many shadow maps, but we are happy to have finally fixed this issue that has been bugging us for years.
That's much better. Might be a bit overgrown, but the hardware still works. They really use fine materials for these tests. Have to protect your investments after all. Unbreakable materials are expensive.
Originally, we wanted Sterling to help the player in this chamber, given its ruined state and that it was designed for dual portals. So in the pit, there was a whole animation of part of the floor being taken away by a panel and being replaced with a version that had an auto portal, along with bringing a cube too. While visually very entertaining to watch, and a great explanation for why there was an auto portal in Chamber 12 from Portal 1, a playtester managed to worm their way under the floor, and there were some visual bugs to it as well. I had tried numerous times to fix it and keep it in the game, but I eventually had to cut my losses and remove it. The geometry for the panels of the sequence of events is still present, a reminder of what once was. I still don't know how they got under there.
you know that this iteration of your Aperture Science handheld portal device has been specifically configured to not shoot portals further than 8 kilometers? Yeah, they quickly learned to limit the range on these things. Can easily end the whole world if you put a portal on the sun. You know, I wasn't aware that the surface is in such a rough state. Didn't want to say it before, but this place is such a mess. This will take so long to clean up. Whoever did this was very thorough in their work.
Act 2 starts rather slowly. It is built to center around momentum and flinging. We noticed that many players lacked some common flinging skills. It's not used as much in Portal 2 and Portal Revolution up until this point, so to remind players that flings exist and are a necessary part of these tests, we added some little training chambers at the beginning of the chapter.
Oh, I just realized, you don't even know how this all happened. Well, long ago, Aperture was run by a central core capable of monitoring and maintaining the whole facility. Certain tasks were outsourced to other cores, like me. Everything was great, you know? A true utopia. Until one human test subject, this little monster, just had to ruin our lives and killed her. And that's that. Most of my colleagues either went crazy, died, or disappeared. What else were we supposed to do if we can't fulfill our purpose? I promised you could leave once we're done, but if you ever need a job in the future, don't hesitate to come back. I'd rather say this before it's too late. Use the gels sparingly. The tanks aren't being refilled anymore, and what's left won't last forever. Once they're empty, we're gonna have a little problem. The gels are also highly corrosive and will eat through metal and skin given enough time. Might be good to know.